Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is an introduction to GCP, but thinking about how we actually use it in our day-to-day activities rather than just knowing it as a guidance that we have to follow or regulations that we have to follow. How do we actually apply it? So what we're going to be talking about a good clinical practice, and I know you mentioned CFR 58, that's good laboratory practice for our animal model friends. Yeah, right? So this is focused primarily on CDER, so Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. So we will talk about that. And as we go through, I mentioned reviewing the CSR. You know, one of the things I do as an auditor is, and I just had a mock inspection last week, and we close out tomorrow. The question I ask during interviews is I talk to the people who signed the CSR, and, you know, there's that statement that says the study was conducted in accordance with GCP. I say, how do you know? Right? What would you use to show a regulatory authority that you did conduct this in accordance with GCP? So that's what we're going to talk about in this course, the regulations, the guidelines that govern the conduct and oversight of human subject research so that we're compliant with the Code of Federal Regulations here in the States. One of the things I tend to do is I will load you up with some additional documents. So there is a document from the Office of Human Research Protections, which is another side of the DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, and it's the Human Subject Protection Compilation, and it is put out annually, usually in the spring, and it lists, I think they're up to like 143, I want to say, countries, and the regulations for those countries, and hyperlinks for that information. So I'm happy to send that if that would be useful for you.
Sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, because, you know, obviously we're looking at FDA, but there are those other things too. Sometimes we'll see studies, like in my mock inspection, one of the studies was conducted under EU as well as FDA, and they kind of forgot that.
Right.
So, right, making sure we match all those things together. So what we'll talk about are the elements of a functional quality system at the site level. So this course is really structured to talk about how it all comes together at that site level. And as we go along, we'll talk about some of the documents that you're seeing and what those documents mean and how we look at them in terms of those essential documents. They're documents that individually and collectively tell the story of how that study was conducted and overseen. We'll look at recent trends in noncompliance, so what the FDA is seeing when they go out and do their inspections under the Bioresearch Monitoring Program. We'll talk about the role of SOPs in good clinical practice. I know you guys have SOPs in place. We'll look at the differences between the legal and procedural elements of GCP. So what do the regulations say versus what is it we are actually doing to try to meet those regulatory obligations? And this is not going to be as critical for you looking at the differences between pharmaceuticals, devices, and biologics, but be mindful for the most part. We have a core set of regulations that we follow with some tweaks for upon the type of investigational product. So the common elements of GCP, the things that we are all mostly familiar with when we hear about it, are those core elements. 21 CFR 11, so you mentioned this before too. This is electronic records and signatures. So if we're using any of those electronic systems, so if data is coming to you electronically, if you're using it to process or archive or maintain, transmit data, we want to make sure that those systems, if they are housing regulatory documents, that they are compliant with 21 CFR Part 11. And I put that in parentheses because a lot of people still don't accept that that's what the FDA is looking for. But the FDA itself has said, hey, we probably are not going to call you out on 21 CFR 11. We're going to cite you to 312, for example, if we're failing to maintain adequate and accurate records. So we look at Part 11 and understanding that's part of good clinical practice. 21 CFR 50, this is the protection of human research participants through the document and process of informed consent. 21 CFR 54, this is another one of those documents that you will probably be reviewing because you have to report to your Form FDA 3544 to the FDA, 3455, sorry, for financial disclosure. So we gathered this document prior to release of investigational products. So the regulations say we have to get it before the study starts, during the course of the study if there are any changes, and 1 year after the study. And what we're looking to assess is whether there is any potential for conflict of interest or bias in the conduct and oversight of that study. And we're tasked with mitigating that. It doesn't mean an investigator cannot participate in that study, But I always say the bullseye on their back gets a little bit bigger if you're the high enroller and you own 51% stock in your company, or you have this person as an exclusive consultant, for example.